Lord, can I just ask for you, and I know that you are already going to be doing this, but would you just be very present here? Would you be speaking to our hearts? Would you help us to grab onto the truths that you have laid out in your word, grab onto them and apprehend them, not only in our head, but also, Lord, in our hearts. So that we don't just think it, we believe it, we feel it, Lord, and it dictates the steps of our lives. Lord, because you have made yourself known to us, and we are so grateful to that. You have made yourself known to us, and I thank you for your Son, Jesus, who came, who lived, who died on the cross for us. We thank you as people who have experienced the goodness of your grace, and we want more to experience that. Pray this in your name. Amen. Amen. Well, you're going to have to bear with me as I go throughout, because I am suffering still through a cough that lingers perpetually, and so I have a water up here. But yeah, so that's my little disclaimer to go. But does anybody here know what ranking Coca-Cola has in the world logo symbol? Is it 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5? You like Coke. Actually, it's number 2. Coke is actually ranked number 2 in the most recognizable symbols in the world. It is. It kind of has that flair, we might say, because of the impact it's had across the world. In fact, the founder, one of the early founders of it, had this slogan, which really drove the company, is that have a Coke within arm's reach of every person in the world. Now, that's a pretty crazy, a pretty large goal. It's one you think, hey, that's just too big to even think about. But they've really been able to accomplish that more or less. In fact, think about this. When the Coke first started, the first year, they averaged 9 servings of Coke a day. Now, they're averaging 1.8 billion servings of Coke a day. That's a lot of growth. That's a lot of movement that Coke has been able to have, right? That's a lot of engagement they've had with this across the goal, and they've continued to be passionate, apparently, about sugar water, because they keep pushing sugar water, and they're obviously then passionate about that, right? Well, I said they're the second most recognizable symbol in the world. Anybody know what the first most recognizable symbol? The cross. Yes, I heard several of those. The cross is the first most recognizable symbol in the whole world. But like Coke, we have a lot of explaining to do about the meaning and purpose of the cross. Because there's a lot of people who still don't really know what the cross means and what it symbolizes and why it is we put our hope in the one who died on the cross. And so we have a lot of work to do, not just in the world, but also in our community. Because if we did a survey actually back in May about our community, 10-mile radius from the church, and I've said this before, but there's about 336,000, give or take, people living 10 miles from this church, going down to Camarillo, going out to even Agora, out to Thousand Oaks, you name it. And we also found in that survey that there was hundreds of thousands, upwards of 300,000 of people who aren't connected to a church and aren't following Jesus. That's just a lot of people in our community that we have connected to. And so we have an important task at hand to go and connect. Now, one thing Coke would never say is that they never say we've reached enough people already. Coke always says, and their mission is, we need to reach more people. And I would just venture to say to us, never let it be said about Coke that they're more passionate, or never let it be said that Coke is more passionate about sugar water than we are about reaching people for Jesus. That seems to be in some ways what can take place, is that here's this company who's really accomplished what they're trying to do, and the church sometimes sits back and isn't going after people. See, here's what I think Coca-Cola does, and I think what we can learn from. Coca-Cola celebrates their wins, and they even tell the world their wins all the time, right? Billions served, you name it, right? They celebrate their wins, but they don't focus on their wins. They focus on the potential. Celebrate the wins, focus on potential. Celebrate success, focus on potential. Now, our potential are the thousands of people that we're surrounded by that don't know Jesus yet. That's our potential. We want to celebrate the success and the wins that God has had in people's lives, but the potential is what we want to focus on. And say, there's still more people that do not understand the meaning and purpose of the cross, and I want to make sure they get a chance to hear it and understand it and even respond to it. That's the potential we want to talk into. And today, I want to talk more about how we can take steps toward reaching that potential for us. Now, last week we kicked off this series that we're titling 4. And I want to kind of give you just the summation, really in a nutshell, of last week. I'd encourage you to go online and listen to it in its full if you weren't here, but here's kind of summation of it all. We asked this question: what do we want to be known for? And then we presented this problem. The problem is that many people are more familiar with what the church is against. Many people are more familiar with what the church is against. And in light of what Paul says and his kind of mission and the way he goes about his mission in 1 Corinthians chapter 9, where he said, I try to find common ground with everyone, doing everything I can to save some. In light of that, we recognize that many are more familiar with what we're against, what we're for, but we want to be a church that is known for what we're for, not just what we're against. We want people to know, hey, that church is for this. And here's what we say when we say what we're for. We are for the Conejo Valley. We can even expand that. I had somebody say, I live down in Oxnard. Okay, we are for Ventura County. We're for Ventura County. We're for this area. We're for the people. We're for the businesses. We're for the schools. We're for the kids. I think we can all resonate. That's what people feel as well. I'm for my kids, and so are we. And here's why. Because God's for them. And that was last week's message in a nutshell. God is for people, and that's why we're for people too. That's why Jesus came into the world. God is for Ventura County. He's for the people to get experience his love. He's for them having the fullness of life. And today I want to talk about a mindset that I want us to have in order for us to engage people who have said no to Jesus. No even to our beliefs, and no even to the church. I want to talk about how we can start engaging those people even more. Now, what I want to do is use one example from the life of Jesus as our base commentary for this, as our base rooting. And I could use a lot of different examples from Jesus, but this one here I think is very poignant in addressing this conversation. It's found in Luke 19. If you have your Bibles, you might want to pull that out. I will have the verses on the screen, but if you want to pull those out, it's Luke 19, 1 through 10. And this is a story. Here's some backdrop to the story for you, is as you're turning there and whatnot, but Jesus is at the tail end of his 3-year ministry on earth. At the end of that, he'll be crucified, he'll raise from the dead and ascend back into heaven. He's in the last, we'll say, months of that ministry. He is making his way down from Galilee, which is the northern part of Israel, down into Jerusalem, which is more of the southern middle section of Israel. And he's going to go up by way of a place called Jericho. And Jericho is direct east of of Jerusalem. So he's kind of going around about crescent moon kind of shape. And this is where the story picks up. Jesus entered Jericho and was passing through. A man was there by the name of Zacchaeus. He was a chief tax collector and was wealthy. Now, Zacchaeus is our first character that we can focus on. It tells us about him a bit in this description. He was a chief tax collector. Now, a tax collector, if you've been here at any point throughout the past year here, I've talked numerous times about what a tax collector is, but let me just remind us all about this. A tax collector is really the lowest of the low of the low, because not only were they on the outside, but they were the ones who betrayed their own people to be on the outside. So basically, the Israelites in that day were in subjection to the Romans. They were the captors, and they were levying taxes and oppressing them. Tax collectors were people who were Jewish, who were of the people being oppressed, who went to their oppressors and said, I will do your job for you by oppressing my people, and in so doing, I get the freedom to levy more taxes on them so that I can pad my pockets. Now, that just doesn't sit well. Taxes in one thing don't sit well, but when it's somebody who's betraying you in that way and selling you out, then that person is extremely looked lowly upon. Now, the picture that I gave before, I'll give again today, is back in the 1940s when Nazis were taking over Germany. It'd be like one Jewish family selling out another Jewish family to the Nazis by turning them in. You can imagine the animosity and the anger that would be attached to that. That's this guy, Zacchaeus, in the community. And he wasn't just a tax collector, he was the chief tax collector, meaning he had a system below him of other tax collectors that he was managing and overseeing. He had a big region. And he was very wealthy because of his livelihood. He padded his pockets with a lot of people's money, and many of those people were kicked out of their homes because of that, were put into slavery because of that. This was a big deal. That's Zacchaeus. And to go into that line of work, someone would have to say no to God and no to God's people. So you'd have to say, I turn my back. I say no to God's people. I say no to God. Well, this guy Zacchaeus, he wanted to see Jesus, curious like everybody else. But because he was short, which, man, for all you us short people, or the short people out there, this guy is the kindred one. He could not see over the crowd. So he ran ahead and he climbed a sycamore fig tree to see him, since Jesus was coming that way. When Jesus reached the spot, he looked up and said to him, Zacchaeus, come down immediately. I must stay at your house today. Now, of all the people in that crowd, because there was a crowd following him, which is why he had to climb the tree, of all the people there, Jesus picks out Zacchaeus to say this. I mean, what do you do for lodging? Well, let's pick a person. We'll invite myself to their house. But he picks Zacchaeus, who wasn't even a part of the crowd, was more of an ancillary person there. And he stops intentionally and focuses on him, who's Zacchaeus. He went out of his way to say, we'll put it this way, yes to Zacchaeus. Now, moving on. So he came down, that is Zacchaeus, at once and welcomed him gladly. Now, obviously, this does not sit too well with the congregation. All the people saw this and began to mutter or grumble, complain, not just to themselves, but publicly, and people knew it was going on. And they're saying this, he has gone to be the guest of a sinner. Now, that's an indictment. In that culture, for somebody to take up lodging and be a welcome guest in the home of someone else was to kind of link arms and share in who they were and what they do. So Jesus was an accomplice now by saying yes to Zacchaeus. This was a scandalous thing because he was validating, in their mind's eye, the corrupt secular world that Zacchaeus was a part of. He was validating in their mind the corrupt secular world that Zacchaeus was a part of. And they would have been fine if he chose anybody else in the crowd, but the one who was vehemently working against God and God's people and God's values. That guy is working against us, Jesus, and you're linking arms. And you seem to be validating his life. But check out what takes place that night at his home. Zacchaeus stood up and said to the Lord, Look, Lord, here and now I give half of my possessions to the poor. And if I've cheated anyone out of anything, I will pay back 4 times the amount. Now, if you do the math on that, he's going to be poor within the month. He'll be out of his home, and he'll have no money in his account within the month. Because all his money came from cheating people, and now he's going to pay him back double. If he really sought out and did this, put him in the poorhouse. That's pretty crazy. I'm assuming he was serious in his statements. I have to assume, because Jesus assumed he was also. And here's the point that I want to make in that, is this. Something powerful happens when the people who said no to church realize the church has still said yes to them. Jesus, even though he had said no to God and God's people, Jesus said yes to him, and something powerful happened. Something powerful happens in people when they realize that the church isn't saying no to them, even though they've said no to the church. The church is actually saying yes to them. We have an example here, and we hear stories about it, where people reach out, and that interaction, that changes them. Verse 9, Jesus says to him, Today salvation has come to this house, because this man too is a son of Abraham. Now, I want to highlight that word too. It's kind of an insert there, but it's really important because Jesus in this statement, there's a crowd of people. What was taking place is they went to his home, but people kind of come and follow because they're just curious. I mean, we're curious people. Now we do it on televisions and have reporters go to people's homes to watch things. Back then, they would go themselves and stand outside and kind of watch what's taking place, still grumbling to themselves about what's going on inside that home. When Zacchaeus does this, Jesus stands up and he kind of addresses everybody in earshot. And he's saying, hey, salvation has come to this house because this man too is a son of Abraham. Basically saying, he's not much different than you guys. You think there's a big divide, but he's not unlike you. You think he's lost his position from which God can reach down to him, but he hasn't. You think that you're in a better standing before God, but really, you're not. We're on the same playing field. He too is a son of Abraham, just like you. He too is a human. Maybe for us, he too is a person made in God's image, like you. We're all sinners. Let's pull the log out of our eye. Verse 10, he summarizes, let me tell you why I went to his house. Let me tell you why I chose him, because the Son of Man came to seek and to save the lost. We hit on this last week. That's his why. That's his why he came. That's his why that he lived. That's why that he died. You say, why are you living and doing the miracles and teaching? It's because I'm here to seek and save the lost. Why are you going to the cross? To seek and save the lost. Why are you going to raise from the dead? It's to seek and save the lost. That's why. How he goes about this is very clear. He says yes to those who have said no to God and God's people. That's how he does it. Now let's define lost really quickly, just because it'd be good for our minds. The lost are not only people who have said no to God, to the church, to our beliefs, but it's also people who feel like the church has said no to them. Maybe you have kids who feel that way. The church just said no to me. And it's not that anyone says it directly. I mean, sometimes it is. I've experienced people say, no, they kicked me out because I had to clean myself up in so many ways before they would even consider this. I remember a lady over in Africa I met who had been divorced, no fault of her own, but her husband left her. And the church said, you can't be divorced and be here. The church said no to her. Now, it's not always that overt. Sometimes it's a feeling. Like they just don't care about me. They kind of just judge me, right? It's a feeling, and I feel like they're just saying no to me. Right or wrong, people get the sense at times that the church would say no to them. And that person, as they feel that way, is walking away. We might say one of the 90, who's strayed away as one of the lost, that the shepherd wants to go after. That's the lost. And maybe they feel the church said no to them because of lifestyle choices like Zacchaeus was, or they just got to clean themselves up. But I don't see anywhere that that's the Jesus way. That's not the Jesus way. I see and I believe that Jesus understood something really important. And in fact, I kind of draw this thought from him, is that people in general have a powerful desire to belong and be accepted. People in general have a powerful desire that God instill them to belong and be accepted. So someone who's considering the gospel isn't only asking, can I believe this, but also, would I be accepted? Would I belong? This person who's bringing this to me, am I accepted? Would I belong? We want to say yes to those who've said no. We want to be a church that is going out of our way to say yes the best we can to those even who have said no, and feel like the church has said no to them. For us to do this, though, it requires us to push back against insider thinking. Now, Coca-Cola, in reaching 1.8 billion a day people, and getting an arm's reach of everybody in the world, has had to push back against insider thinking. Insider thinking is, hey, we've got plenty of people right now. We're rich. We've got money in the bank. We've got half the world. I mean, we've got most of the soda market already. And so let's just enjoy that. But they keep pushing. How do we get that last 3%? How do we get to that person over there and reach them as well? See, insider thinking is saying, well, we've reached enough people. Let's celebrate our wins. Let's focus on our wins. But remember, you could celebrate wins and celebrate success, but you focus on the potential. You focus on there's still more people who don't know Jesus. How do we start? Like Paul said, I try to do everything, find common with anyone so that any means possible I can save some. How do we do that more? That's our potential. That's what we go after. And again, never let it be said that the Coke industry is more passionate about sugar water than we are about people meeting and receiving Jesus. For that to be the case would be a problem for us. Now, as leaders, myself, pastors, Randy, Bill, Nate, also the elders, guys, we do and we will. We think about you. But our job is to get you to not think about you. That's our job. That's what Jesus came to get people to stop thinking about themselves. I'll think about you. We think, but our goal is to get you to not think about you, but to focus and think about others. I believe the best kind of church for you or anyone to attend isn't one that caters to you, but that invites you into the mission of focusing on those who are far from God. Because that's Jesus' why. That's why he came. That's his heartbeat. And today I want to invite you to be on mission with us. I want to ask you to serve in this church, to give to this church, to be involved in this church. I want to ask you to do that, and here's why. Because you'll never really know what the church can do for you until you experience what the church can do through you. You'll never really know what the church can do for you until you experience what the church can do through you. And my proof text for this is Jesus' invitation to his disciples. Follow me. The obvious question is, why? What's in it for me? That's a natural human response. Why? What's in it for me? What benefit do I get? How is this going to meet my needs? And Jesus' answer is, well, I'm going to make you fishers of men. You see, the for is the answer on the through. You want to receive the benefits of this? You got to let me work through you for other people. Follow me, and I will make you fishers of men. That's how we answer the question with them. I know many of you are already serving in the church. Many of you are giving generously, and that's wonderful, and are already involved, and that's great. Keep doing it, but some of you aren't. Some of you haven't jumped in and haven't gotten involved, and that's no shame on that, but I want to invite you into this, invite you into it. I want to invite you to being used, not just focused on. I want to invite you to being used, not just focused on. Now, for the rest of the morning, I want to get very practical and give us just 3 ways that we're trying as a church. I want to challenge you as a church to kind of say yes to those who have said no to Jesus. How do we do that? And these ideas, I'm telling you 2 things real quick. One is that I don't have all the answers. We're still kind of figuring this thing out as we go. But I look to Jesus and I go, what did you do as Zacchaeus to communicate yes? How did that look? What did that saying yes look like? And let's at least start there. So the first one, say yes by showing we're not so different. Say yes by showing, and you can put you in there, that you're not so different. This is one thing Jesus emphasized to the audience. Well, you could say Jesus came to earth and took on the body of a human being. That's him showing, that identifying in that way. But with them, with the crowds, he was saying, this man too is a son of Abraham. You guys aren't much different. You guys don't have that much in dissimilarity. You're not all that different. Don't be so aghast that I would spend time with him. I'd go into his home. Yes, you could say his work and his lifestyle are secular and corrupt, but don't therefore mean that you're living a high life. No, we're all sinners saved by grace, right? God is for sinful, rebellious, faithless people. And the reason he's for that kind of person is because that's the only kind of people there are. Even as a follower of Jesus, we see faithlessness. We see selfishness in us. We just do. Say yes by showing that we're no different. Now, there's a survey done a few years back, and there's been a lot of surveys over the past decade especially, but a few years back there's a survey done on a group called the Nones. Now, the Nun means on the boxes and your little forms that you fill out, there's for religious affiliation. You have all these different religious. There's a box that says none. And those who check the none box are the ones that they were interested in as to kind of their thoughts and so forth. The largest age demographic of the nuns in America are 18 to 34-year-olds. It's growing, it's exploding. In fact, that's one thing that many scholars are trying to kind of understand the dynamics taking place with that. In fact, Pastor Nate, with his doctorate studies, that's one of the questions they keep exploring as well. What's going on with our young, with our kind of 18 to 34-year-olds, why are they stepping away? Why are they saying no? Why are they walking away? And here's a question they asked is, what do you like about the church? And there was a lot of struggle on that, but the answer that did come up was this community. What would you like about the church? What do you like about it? What's a good community? And one person even wrote this that I thought was really, really important. They said, I would be more likely to attend church if I could find a community I could relate to. That word relate to, I think, is an important one. I would be more likely to attend church if I could find a community I could relate to. See, people, again, who are considering the gospel aren't only asking, can I believe this, but also would I belong? And one of the questions we've been asking as leadership is, why are young people leaving? Same kind of thing. Why is that taking place? And it comes down to relationship and relatability. That's a huge thing. The next generation, the next door neighbor, how do we connect to them? That's a question that we ask a lot. How do we bridge that gap? We don't shrink that gap for them. How do we connect the dots? How do we find common ground? Because a lot of the people who leave the church aren't leaving Jesus, they're just leaving the church because the church doesn't connect to me. The church doesn't relate to me. I'm going to get off notes here just to point just something out on this. Is the reason that they leave the church, same way that you would leave a church. We've had people who say, I'm not going to come because the style of music isn't what I like. That's why they're leaving too. It's the same reasons. That people say because the message is this or that. It's the reasons that they also. See, the reasons are across the board. And we want to ask, how do we make sure we're reaching downward and outward as a church? Downward and outward. Because that's who Jesus is. How do we make sure that our church posture as a community is reaching downward and outward? That's why as a leadership we're thinking through that question. But what could we do? What changes could we make? Obviously, there's things that don't change, but what can we change? What's allowed to change? How can we adjust so that we're able to reach downward and outward and have us who have been in the church a long time go, you know what? I'm on mission. Don't just focus on me. Use me. Use me on this. A pastor that has really challenged my thinking is a guy named Erwin McManus. He's a pastor in LA, but he wrote a book. I thought, man, he had a lot of insightful things. And this is a quote that really stuck out to me. It said, the church will either die to itself or by itself. Either die to itself or by itself. I thought, wow. There's a constant requirement for us always be dying to self, so we're not dying by ourselves. So we're reaching more people, connecting the dots for the next generation and even our next door neighbor. And this connects to the next way in which we want to say yes to those who are no, not just what I say on that one, sorry, not just showing that we're not that different, but two is say yes by going into their world. By going into their world. And that's what Jesus did. I mean, he went to this guy's house, right? He invited himself there. He went into his secular world there. He showed up, spoke volumes to everybody else about, wow, so the gospel actually can get to this kind of environment too. Yes, the gospel is that good. It's that amazing. See, I think one of the things we have to realize, and the people learned that day, was that world of Zacchaeus wasn't untouchable from Jesus. That it's, John 3:16 applies that, for God so loved that world also, the people in that world. See, the world in John 3:16 isn't the world in all its glory, it's the world in all its badness. For God so loved the world in its badness that he gave his son into the badness. He went for it, right? Zacchaeus' world wasn't outside of that. God so loved that world also that he sent Jesus into that world also. We can say there's a secular, and there is, but God loves that world. He wants to go into that world, and he wants to show people his love. He engages that world. He moves toward that world. He finds connectors to that world. He does. You hear it all the time. And Jesus is our great prime example. This is why, as a church, we've done events like Eggvent. I mean, Eggvent is an approach or a thought to engage the world, and we can say, Easter is about the resurrection, not about Easter eggs. Yes, but you know what? For people who are outside the church, eggs are something that they kind of rally around. So let's just leverage that. Let's utilize that. Connect to them on their terms. But hear them say, guys, so many times, the last 2 years we've done this, I've talked to people going, oh my gosh, this is so cool that you're a church? I didn't know that. And then I would meet somebody here. Yeah, I went to Eggvent. And I just saw that was connected to me, and so I thought I'd come over here. We had 1,500 people last year at Eggvent who showed up from the community. Now, none of them came to the church after that, but you know what you're doing? You're communicating. We're saying yes to you. We're on your terms. We're letting you know that we're aware that you're there. We're not shunning all that you do. We're actually engaging who you are, where you're at. That's the idea of Eggvent, right? And even the other events we do to reach out to people along the way. Now this year, as I mentioned a few weeks ago, because of just budgetary needs, we've taken Eggvent off the calendar. We won't have it on the calendar this year because we can't afford it. We don't have the budget for it. We got to remove that from it, which is a bummer, which is really sad actually. Connecting point, and I would love to see that get put back in over time. And one of my prayers is, Lord, would love the giving to increase more, and we can put things back in and leverage those sorts of situations, those environments, and those events. But those are the decisions that we have to make. So things like Eggvent. It's just one of those things in which we want to try to go into their world. But here's another way that we try to go to people's worlds, is by asking how we can help. Asking how we can help. Now that question implies that you're listening and implies that you're waiting for them to answer. And this is the whole idea behind this series, this initiative of 4. In fact, many of your life groups are asking the question, how can we help somebody? What are their needs? How do we meet that need? How do we engage them? In doing that, you're saying yes to them. You're going to them and trying to communicate, we're saying yes to you. Even if you've said no to us or to the church or to Jesus or to our beliefs, we want to say yes to you. That's why we're doing this. That's why if somebody shows up here, maybe it's your friend and they have their kids, and anyone who has kids and so forth, they're going, here's my need. I want to sit and I want to experience the service, but I got these kids. Where do I put them? Our answer is in the back. Well, there was one week we couldn't have the kids back there, all of them, because we didn't have enough helpers back there, and that's a problem. How do we meet that need? How do we communicate to them, yes, we're here, we're yes to you. And that's why I always kind of push and say, hey, if you're not serving somewhere, would you consider the back with us kids during a service? Or would you consider high school and junior high? Being involved. You don't have to be the sharpest tool in the shed. You really don't. You don't have to be the smartest Bible scholar. You could be brand new to Jesus. You just show up. Be present. In fact, this last week I was talking with some of the elders, and I asked about what do we see as our wins. And Jason Kearns, who works back with the kids in the back, said, "Let me tell you my win. Win is like that success. What do you celebrate, right? Here's my win." He said a few weeks back I was engaging the kids and kind of trying to apply to their life the lesson. I said, how does this apply to your relationship with your friends? And one of the little boys said, I don't have friends. You know, the fact that he felt safe enough to say that Jason was a familiar enough face in that room that he felt like this guy is for me, I can share that. I mean, obviously his heart broke, right? But he said that was a win because it told me that he feels safe around me. That's all they're looking for. They'll give you the curriculum. They'll give you questions to ask. But presence communicates forness, right? Same with our junior high, high school. This presence is important. Never underestimate that. Would you think about those things? But also, here's another angle of asking for help and the why. Is this last Tuesday, we had a lady walk into our staff meeting, where staff was meeting at lunchtime, and they just needed help. They needed financial help. They had a lot of financial help, actually. Now, I was in the middle of the meeting, and I was thinking about all the details, and so I also knew that our benevolence account was next to zero, and so I kind of dismissed it, and I said, we don't have it, I'm sorry. And fortunately, other staff members caught on and righted that ship and so forth, and really went back there and tried to take care of her and so forth, and got her name and stuff. And Jack, as he looked over the benevolent stuff, says, we don't have the funds. Now, here's her situation. This lady, as Jack shared with me and kind of read on her sheet and so forth, is that she lives, Conejo Valley here, and her husband left her, and he's left the country, so there's no support money coming in, though he makes plenty of money. And because of that, there's no one able to pay rent on the house, and so the house is a few months behind, and there's a total of, with utilities and rent and so forth, about a $10,000 bill that she's left trying to figure out how to pay and can't pay it. Now, She's been to multiple churches asking for some kind of help, and every church says, "No, we can't help you. We can't do that." She's been said no by every church she's went to, and here she is coming to us. Here's my ask. Here's my need. Now, I admit, man, Tim, some bills are just too big, and we can't make everybody happy. We can't meet everybody's need. And part of me, as I thought on that this week, because guys, I felt like I missed the person and I missed the need in the midst of the details, important details to talk about, but I missed it, and that was my bad. Randy is someone that throughout the week has really been stewing on that a lot and thinking about how do I at least help her with something, which is awesome. And I've been thinking about, Lord, how do we change that response a little bit? And I was thinking, the Lord brought to my mind, I believe he brought it to my mind, but it's when Jesus fed 5,000 people, he told his disciples, you feed them. Now that's an impossible task right there, right? How do you meet I could meet 2 needs, but how do you meet all of their needs? Now, I don't think that was a superfluous request. I think that request was real. I think he was saying, you feed them, guys. Now, we all know how the story ends, but the invitation to them to really seek out how, they said, we can't do it. Nope. So Jesus stepped in and did something miraculous, right? But I still think he offers out there, guys, you meet the need. I brought her to you. Are you going to say no also? Now, again, there's always reasons. There's always limitations. I get that. But how awesome would it be? Let's just say for 1 year, 2018, in which everybody who came for help, whether it be for kids, whether it be finances, whatever it may be, emotional help, just needing a relationship, a friend, a life group to connect to, whatever, that we can say yes to them. What if we had that kind of resource? What if our benevolence fund was $30,000, $40,000 full, and when somebody comes, we can actually meet that. We can actually help you with that. Another area we've had to kind of scale back on, and we've had to cut back, is our missions. Our missions given to overseas, just because, again, had to cut back certain areas. Nobody wants to make that cut, right? Again, I'm not trying to put shame or anything. I'm just trying to, I would love to have everybody who walks into this place who says, yeah, we're here for you. And then walk out going, yeah, they're there for me. No matter if it's a big ask or a little ask. And some of you have experienced saying, I have a real need. Can you help me? And the church saying yes to you. And that's been huge for you. And we want to be able to do that too, but we want to just say yes to people the best we can. Financially, emotionally, with their kids, in any way, especially so that they can then believe we're for them because God is for them, and then we want them to know his love for them. So here's a little invitation is for the month of December and even into the new year. Could we stretch ourselves so that we can say yes to everyone that we need to say yes to that comes our way? That would be amazing. I mean, that would be crazy. Just like the invitation Jesus had with the feeding 5,000 was crazy. But I don't think it's impossible. I really don't. So, there's a challenge for us in what saying yes looks like. And one of the things I love to say to people is and it's hard at times to figure out how to say this, but we have a very generous church. So you can come and ask because we have a generous church. And you guys really are generous. You really are, and I want to thank you for that. Because this church has had a great history of being generous. And I want that not only to continue, but to increase. I want it to increase our impact in that way. So say yes by giving, by going into their world. And we do that by coming into their world, but also by asking how we can help them where they're at. And lastly, say yes by using a common unifying language. Have you ever noticed that the hardest thing to overcome in a relationship is a language barrier? I mean, that's the hardest one. If you don't speak the same language, you're really at a loss to really develop something really deep there. It's hard. And this is why we're doing this initiative 4. This is why 4 is here. Because everybody understands it, whether you're 2 years old, 20 years old, 80 years old, whether you're Christian or a non-Christian, we understand being for somebody. It's a common language. But not only is the for, but the posture and action of being for somebody is commonly experienced, and we all understand that. We're trying to build that into the framework and the conversation of our church so that we understand it, and also the community understands it as to, well, why? Well, because we're for you, because God is for you. We want you to experience him. So say yes by using a common unified language, which is why we're doing this series and this initiative. And after the service, we're going to have a nice, as I botched last service, but a nice ice cold Coke for you. Everyone here will get a nice ice cold Coke. You're welcome. You don't have to thank me. I'm just telling you right now, you're welcome. Everybody likes Coke. And let me tell you why. Because Coke, it reminds us in a tangible way that Coke is committed to reaching more people. And we are too. Put that on your mantle, put it in your fridge, and you open it up, just keep it there for a little while before you drink it down, right? There's a reminder, Coke is committed to reaching more people. So are we, as an individual and as a community of believers. We want to say yes to those who have said no, because something powerful happens when the people who've said no to the church and to Jesus realize the church has still said yes to them. God has blessed this church with incredible potential. Not just in what we have, but in the people we're surrounded by, in what is left still to be completed. That's an incredible potential. And we're going to say yes to them by showing that we're for them. We will continue to reach the next generation and our next door neighbor because God, the best news of all, is for them. And He's for us. Let me pray. Jesus, I want to say thank you that you're for us. Those of us who have experienced you in that way and given our lives to you is only because it's the most natural response when we experience that. Lord, why would I not want to follow you? The God who created us, the God who breathed life into us, and the God who, after we walked away, the God who came after us, the God who gave his life for us, the God who rose from the dead for us. There's no question that you're for us. I pray we'd be able to communicate that same heartbeats to those who are outside these walls, those in the world, those who do not yet know you, those who feel like the church has said no to them, or those who have actually said no to the church. I pray that even though they say no to the church, they would say, wow, but the church still says yes to me. And that by doing that, in some way, we might have the blessing of partnering with you and saving some. I pray this in your name. Amen.